Good evening, and welcome to the Friday webinars at Wharton Arts, a series dedicated to making authentic connections between art and life through the sharing of stories, expertise, and creations by guest artists of varied disciplines. Wharton Institute for the Performing Arts comprises the New Jersey Youth Symphony, Patterson Music Project, and the Performing Arts School as New Jersey's largest nonprofit performing arts education organization, serving over 1,200 students of all ages and abilities through a range of classes and ensembles. So tonight, we kick off the Friday webinar series with an exploration of women in jazz with Grammy-nominated saxophonist Tia Fuller and pianist Shamie Royston. So when Grammy-nominated Mac Avenue recording artist and composer and band leader Tia Fuller picks up her saxophone, something amazing happens, blending technical brilliance, melodic creativity, and the performing precision drawn from both her academic and stage experience. Ms. Fuller is a force to be reckoned with in the worlds of jazz, pop, R&B, and more. Currently, Ms. Fuller balances the worlds of performance and education, fulfilling a demanding schedule as both a busy touring and recording artist, and as a full-time professor at the Berklee College of Music in Boston. Ms. Fuller graduated from Spelman College with a Bachelor of Arts degree in music and earned a master's degree in jazz pedagogy and performance from the University of Colorado at Boulder. As a leading jazz musician in the music industry, Ms. Fuller was selected to be a member of the all-female band that toured with Grammy-winning pop star Beyonce. She has also appeared on a number of major television shows, including the Oprah Winfrey Show, the Grammys, as well as featured soloist with Beyonce for President Obama at the White House. As you might be guessing, they are related. Tia Fuller and Shamie Royston are sisters. And Shamie Royston is a pianist, composer, and educator. The New York Times states she is a rhythmic vanguardist who channels Kenny Kirkland, Jerry Allen, Ahmad Jamal, and McCoy Tyner. Royston has been commissioned to compose and arrange works for trumpeter Sean Jones, saxophonist Tia Fuller, and Grammy-winning vocalist Diane Reeves. In addition to her accolades as a prolific performer and composer, Ms. Royston has received several awards for her exemplary work in music education. Within the past 2 decades, she has directed all-state bands, all-state jazz bands, and full-piece orchestras. At the Berklee School of Music, Ms. Royston held a full-time professorship in the jazz composition department, where she co-directed ensembles with Terence Blanchard and taught jazz composition and arranging courses. She's currently on the staff at the NYO Jazz Summer Program through Carnegie Hall and serves one of the directors at New Jersey Youth Symphony right here as the director of big band and coaches jazz combos. She has conducted clinics for top ensembles throughout the country and around the world. And she continues to teach in the Piscataway school system here in New Jersey, where she leads the jazz band and 3 concert bands. And Ms. Royston's most recent CD entitled Beautiful Liar, which you heard a little bit of at the beginning of the show here tonight, was released in June of 2018. And she has received phenomenal reviews in the Downbeat, Jazzes, and NPR. So, and I had to cut down so much on all of the accomplishments that they have on their bios, but I just wanted to bring them together in this little next sentence. So they're both born in Denver. Shamie and Tia, sisters, grew up alongside in a very musical family, both musical and academically minded. The daughters of 2 public school teachers, and their father played the bass and their mother sang. And the sisters were introduced to jazz at a very young age and eventually joined their parents in the family band, the Fuller Sound. So without any further ado, I would love to invite Ms. Shamie Royston and Ms. Tia Fuller, and let us welcome them.
Hi, thank you, Helen.
Hello, everybody. And I should say that we've been joined by our wonderful assistant manager of New Jersey Youth Symphonies, Alyssa Horn, who's helping us all technically and with all of the attendees here tonight. So welcome to this virtual space where we can talk candidly, but also really share our thoughts about kind of where things are right now, but tracing back to your personal stories. We have a whole bunch of students with us in this webinar tonight, just eager to hear kind of what were you doing when you were their age, right? We get all very curious about our teachers and our mentors and our kind of stars backgrounds. And so I just wanted to invite you, I don't know, we didn't really rehearse this because I wanted this to be very organic. Maybe we begin with, I'm going to pick on the older sister. Is that okay, Shamie? To maybe share with us, just your first memories of doing music in your, even before Tia was born, perhaps, if that's appropriate. And then we'll turn it over to Tia, because I think she's got a bit of visuals to kind of prove, how you grew up. So here we go, Shamie.
Yes, hi everybody. It's nice to see everyone here, and hopefully you'll enjoy what we're going to say. And basically, growing up, of course, we grew up in a musical family, so music was always going through our house all the time. And my parents started me out on piano at age 5. So my mom and dad would take me to weekly piano lessons every week. And it was never a chore for me to practice. Like, I was the kid who, our piano was situated in our living room going outside of the house. And so every time I'd run outside to play, I'd come in, get some water, and I sit and I play at the piano. I'd be there for 15 minutes. My friends are like, where's Shamie? What is she doing? And then I go back outside and play. So it's like I practice constantly throughout the day. And then as middle school and high school came, I became more involved. I started playing the flute, and I joined the bands, but I was constantly still practicing all my instruments, flute, piano, going to piano lessons. And high school is when I really became very active. I was in outside programs similar to like NYO, but I was in the marching band, I was in jazz band, I played on the drum line. So music was always a part of what I did. I did other activities too. I was very involved. I was a cheerleader, I did all kind of things, but music was always constant. It was something that my parents never forced me to do, but that I just loved doing. And then I ended up going to school for it. I had a lot of good influences, watching my mom and my dad perform all the time. My sister and I would watch them, and it was, I've never thought that, okay, I'd be up there. It was just something that we did. It was just a part of who I was. And on top of that, I was always into composing. So like I did a 6th grade, I wrote something, it was called Horror in the Hot Tub. And my sister was, she was like the actor, she was like screaming because we had a hot tub in our basement. And I put like a music soundtrack to it with all these synthesizers and turned it in for a project that I did at school. So composition was always in me as well. I would go to movies, and every time I'd hear the movies, my friends would be watching the movies, and I would be like, oh my gosh, did you hear the score? Did you hear what the bass line did? I was like a music nerd, but I loved it because it was just a part of who I was. So I don't know, it's just very, I was actively involved all the time, but without a push. It was just something that I always wanted to do.
And that's what you love doing, and that's what you did. That's great. Well, Tia, I'm sure you have a different perspective too, or maybe you just you were born and then this is what was going on. What was for you?
Yeah, it's funny because as the younger sister, I wanted to share these a couple of pictures just to kind of give you some perspective as our family unit, and just to celebrate the fuller sound, and then I can expand on that.
Right. So tell us a little bit about the Fuller Sound as you are
Oh,
sharing the screen.
oh yeah. Well, the Fuller Sound is a family band, from and my mom and my dad. My dad is a bass, or our dad is a bass player. Our mother is a vocalist, and so growing up, and I'm about to share my screen now as I'm
Yeah,
talking.
please.
And growing up, we were able to, like Shamie said, we're able to really be around music 24/7. Like anytime, here's our family. And as our dad, Fred Fuller, our mom, Elthopia, and then there's Shamie, and in our matching lace dresses. And then there's myself, and then there's our little brother. And this is us as children. And so it was around this age, where I've gotten into some powder of my mom's makeup. But but I was trying to be like Shamie. I was always trying to just, being the little sister, she would always get to the piano and be playing. And she wasn't lying when she said she used to go outside and then come inside and play. And then she used to like hear commercials, and then she would hear melodies and play them on the piano. And so at age 3, I was starting to play piano. But to me, it wasn't as much of an innate process. It was more or less, okay, this is what I have to do. My sister's doing it, so I want to be like her. And she and I, I always say this, but we used to fight over who's gonna practice. And clearly, she won the fight. But fortunately, it allowed for me to really open myself up to some other instruments that I liked. And so at 9 years old, I started playing flute. And then it was around age 11 when I got into middle school, I started playing saxophone. And I'll never forget, here's my baby, but I'll never forget
Yes.
playing a low B flat. And I just remember how it really shook throughout our house, because we had a 3-level house, and I was like up in the loft, and I was like, man, I feel like powerful. So it was at that point that I continued playing saxophone, and I marched percussion in high school. And once again, I was still trying to be like my sister, but I was on the dance squad, the pom-pom squad. And even before that, I was a part of this acting pool and gymnastics. But music was always a constant in our household. And like Shamie said, it was never forced upon us, but it was highly encouraged. And one thing my mom told me is that, okay, Tia, you have to play piano until you're 12. That was the thing, because I was ready to kind of depart the piano. And she said, play piano until you're 12 and then figure out what else you want to do. But I want you to continue to play an instrument. And that's when I found the saxophone. And then oh, sorry.
Sorry. No, it's the wrong button that I was pushing.
Oh, okay.
But I wanted to just ask you that both Chami and Tia, you can unmute yourself and just
Okay.
I think just for the YouTube audience, I just wanted to kind of do the spotlighting. But did you think that this is what you would be doing? You're talking about when you were 12, you picked up your saxophone, but could you imagine, did you have any role models that you can say, wow, I want to be like that jazz musician or that classical musician, whoever it might be? Were there any role models for you that you remember?
Well, mine was my sister. I literally remember sitting on the stairs when she was in college. I remember this, Shamie. I don't know if you do. And your the group that you had, Jacques Nouveau. And I remember sitting there because I had just started playing saxophone, and I was like, man, I want to do that. I want to do what my big sister is doing in a different way. So she was actually my main inspiration early on.
That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Shamie? I mean, we always kind of grow up knowing that, people who we can emulate, we need those role models. I'm just curious if you had that.
I really didn't find my actual role model till I was like 17 or 18. And it was the late Sherry Allen, who, she passed away a few years ago, but jazz pianist. And it was the first woman jazz pianist who I remember hearing her on the radio, and I was like, who is this? And they were like, Jerry Allen. And then I did some research. I was like, oh my gosh, she's this woman. And then she was African-American woman, and she was playing really like strong. And when I heard that, I was like 17, I was like, I need to do that. I need to be just like that, playing forceful, powerful. I mean, it was eye-opening to me. And so ever since that day is really what pushed me more in the jazz era. She was my influence in me playing jazz piano as an African-American woman. Even though there were other people, but she stood out the most to me at that time.
What would you say that what was more shocking? The fact that she was a woman or she was an African-American?
Honestly, it was the fact that she was a woman.
Because there were lots of African-American jazz musicians.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they're mainly like, at that time, you just mainly hear vocalists as jazz musicians. So to see or to hear an instrumentalist who's a woman and African, I mean, there's history before that, but at that time, it was like she was the thing that was out. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. This is another woman who is doing in predominantly a male thing, which was jazz. It wasn't, not a lot of female jazz musicians.
Right.
And so that is what I clung to and held on to.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, the powerful aspect of having someone who looks like you, right? I think it's just an amazing role model that we need to be, and that you are to so many of students, that you're teaching, which is really amazing. Tia, what about you? I would love to hear if there, was a role model that you kind of wanted to emulate.
Oh yeah. There were a lot of role models. So early on, it was really, for me, it was hard to find female saxophonists, and especially African-American female saxophonists. And one of them in particular, sorry, I was just reaching over to get this book that I was going to reference. But one of them in particular, her name was Claire Church. And I remember she wasn't even 5 feet tall. And this jazz camp that both Shamie and I used to go to at Mile High Jazz Camp in Boulder, Colorado, she would be the only woman up there on stage with a big band of men, and she wouldn't even be standing higher than the baritone saxophone. But she would put that horn in her mouth and she would blow, and I was like, what? And I remember early on when I was in high school, she was one of my first influences, like major influences and inspirations on the saxophone as a woman. And then there's another lady in Colorado. Her name was Laura Newman, and she was also a great saxophonist. But between those two, those were my references that I had, and I shared that with Claire, a couple of years ago. But because I saw somebody, and although she was not Black, but I saw a woman up there, and I was like, okay, same thing as Shamie. That stood out the most to me because you didn't see a lot of women. And but the more research I do, and I actually have a PowerPoint of history of women in jazz, which gives like an account of all the female instrumentalists. And I use this resource for all of you out there, American Women in Jazz. This is a great reference by Sally Plaxton. And it really gives her story opposed to his story.
Right.
In jazz.
Wow.
That we've heard over and over and over again.
Yes. So let's maybe fast forward a little bit. If we were to fast forward and now, I don't want to do how many decades, right? Maybe even 20 years ago and now, the industry has changed a lot. Are there definitely more, women jazz players who are in the major circuit, kind of, like you, both in the education world and in the performance world? have you seen some progress in this country in this aspect? I don't know who wants to take
Yeah.
it.
Well, yeah, I think definitely there has been progress. I think we have always been there as women. And we have always been like Lil Hardin Armstrong. She was on the precipice of Louis Armstrong's career. She wrote a lot of his Hot 5 and Hot 7 recordings and arrangements, and really encouraged him to become a leader. And so Lil Hardin Armstrong, Mary Lou Williams used to teach Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk, Dizzy Gillespie. They used to go to her house. So we've always been a part of the fabric of jazz history and just music history in general. But we didn't have the platforms. And so now I think, especially with the movement, like Time's Up movement, and all of these, We Have Voice movement, and all of these different movements, it's giving us more of a voice to speak out in all areas of the arts and of really the world of different vocations. And in jazz, it's really about empowerment, like, and us being empowered enough to stand for ourselves and to advocate for other women and to create other opportunities from women, which is happening more unapologetically now.
Right. That's the key word, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Apologetically. Right. Yeah. And Shamie, I know you're performing a lot, but you're also teaching at all levels, a collegiate level, but also in younger students. Can you just share with us kind of the jazz scene, in a public school situation right now that you are in, which is just so important, and kind of place like NJYS, New Jersey Youth Symphony, that we are part of. Where is jazz education going in this country, and to have educators like yourself who's performing and teaching all at the same time. I think this is just a really important aspect of our music education. So kind of tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I believe, jazz education is becoming more prevalent in a lot of the schools. And it's just, what I'm noticing is just, it's another outlet or a second outlet or a third outlet for students to be involved and playing different styles of music. For me, teaching at all different levels, my number one thing is I tell students to love music. Not just like, if you are a classical player, you love everything. Because I started off playing classical piano. Went to college, did concerto competitions, all of that. But I'm a music lover. And that's the importance in teaching music, is because sometimes students get stuck in one kind of style. Oh, I just want to play classical, or I just want to be a jazz musician, or it's like, no, you be a musician. Because once you get older, you will be called to do all of those things. When I taught at Berklee, I was conducting an orchestra, and they had to do, it was like doing jazz, and they had a jazz combo. So the orchestra having to play this jazz stuff, and violins are having a solo, and they're like, and they were like doing it, but they were predominant jazz or classical musicians, and vice versa. The jazz musicians had to learn all the technical stuff and all the lingo of the classical side. So it's just so important, as an educator, not just to teach jazz music and the language, because that's important, but it's the value of teaching music as a whole, as an educator. And for students to love and to be open to all kinds, opera, country, all of it, because for me, that's who made me who I am. Like, you cannot go into my music library and just see one style. I always tell students, you would be shocked at what you see in my music library, because I'm a lover of music and I listen to everything and try to learn a little bit from everything that I do.
Shamie, I actually have a video, just a little snippet of you conducting at Berklee. And she's conducting an orchestra led by herself, but Terrence Blanchard is playing. Is it okay if I play that?
We would love to see that. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
It's
And
on
we
my
have
Instagram page, so.
and we have our students, loving that school. We have a few students who are studying from New Jersey Youth Symphony.
Oh, great. That's great.
Yeah, yeah. So we love that.
Okay, let's see. Oh.
Yeah, we see her.
Oh, I thought there was some sound. I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Okay. But yeah, here. Huh.
And teaching composition and also just being that role model that you just have to walk in the room, right? And then half the job is done. I mean, I want to just kind of talk about representation, right? We talked about you having these women jazz musicians who really look like you yourselves, and sometimes we get teachers and students kind of really connecting at a deeper level. I wonder if you could go back and talk about, your teachers and, how they were teaching you. I mean, Shamie, you talked about kind of studying all styles of music and all that. But as you went into your college and higher education and masters, um, the representation of women teachers, professors in those places, were there around? And as you are teaching these wonderful college students right now, I would just love to see kind of the progress in your lifetime, Shamie, already. Maybe the changes and what we need to do more and what we need to continue to work at in order to assure that we continue to have role models for our younger students, as well as making sure that women jazz musicians have the platform that will bring them to the public. Because, like Tia, you said, they've always been around. All of these jazz greats have studied with women, jazz teachers, but we just didn't know about them. So, thoughts on that, Shamie?
Yeah, that's such a great question because when I'm thinking back, I did not have a woman in any of my college, or especially in the jazz.
Yeah.
I didn't have any woman professor showing me what to do. But even when I went to grad school, it still wasn't there. It was just me, and especially in jazz. So now we don't have a female professor, but then I'm the only woman in the class. I'm the only female in the class,
Yeah. Yeah.
in the jazz band. So I didn't really think about it at the time because I was like, well, this is just how it is. I just have to hold my own, and it's about playing. But it didn't really become predominant, I guess, till after I graduated. And then when I started teaching and I realized, wow, I'm kind of like a role model for some of these young women. Cause we would, T and I would go around and maybe do clinics in different states around the world or whatever. And women would ask us, female musicians, young musicians would ask us questions. And I think it was at that time that I realized, wow, this is kind of crazy because they're asking us questions, particularly to females, like how do you tour and be a mother?
Mm-hmm. Look at me, just look at me.
Yeah. I mean, that's a master class all in itself.
Right.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, Tia, did you have any professors for women?
In music, I did not, but I luckily went to an undergrad that was in Spelman College, which
Yeah.
is a historically black all-girl college. And so my teacher in music class, well, a couple of them were women, but the main one was a man, and he's like my second dad, Joe Jennings. But I did have the beautiful thing was it was a large amount of sisterhood there.
Yes.
That I experienced. And then I had female professors who were really pouring into me just as far as character, spirituality, excellence, and it transferred into the works that I was doing as a musician. But yeah, it wasn't really until I got on the scene, and it took a couple years, and then I started meeting some girls, and then Terry Lynn Carrington is like a mentor, and Esperanza Spalding is a good friend, and then of course Beyonce's band. That was another like female empowerment moment of female empowerment that I had, and just being in a band of all 10 women, very
Girl
strong.
power.
Yeah, it was very intentional. So with all of those, the culmination of all of those, it was I got it, which was, I was very, very thankful. But now there are organizations for all of the young ladies out there. There's an organization called We Have Voice. And it's 14 of us that come together, and we really talk about equity in music and the performing arts. And then also Terry Lynn Carrington, speaking about her, she started Jazz and Gender Justice, which is an institute housed at Berklee College of Music, and it's incorporating, of course, young women, but also like the social dynamic around music, and being all inclusive, really inclusivity. So yeah, we're doing work around that, which is great.
That's amazing. I just wrote it down. Jazz, gender, justice.
Yeah, jazz and gender justice.
That's great. So then let's turn it around. Do you have a lot of female students that teach currently? I mean, is there an increase in school enrollment? Like, let's say Berklee, what does it look like right now?
As far as students who are teaching, or students that I have?
Students that you have. Are there more girls studying jazz?
There are more. You know, we have to do more work because it's not 50-50 yet. Just as it's very reflective of the scene out there. And you're seeing an incline, which is great, or an increase. Yes. But and I've had some young women who are my students, and you know, of course, I'm really trying to nurture them and really build them up, because unfortunately, in this society, this patriarchal society, they've had to endure, just like we've had to endure, a certain level of sexism, and really trying to deconstruct that thing in their mind of like, let me be quiet, let me, you know, and really allowing them tapping into their power and allowing them to say, hey, you know what, I'm giving myself permission to play my behind off and to not hide behind these guys. And the interesting thing is, sometimes, because Berklee is international and it's representative of all of the countries. So I know Shamie saw this too, because we would talk about this, but sometimes it's a cultural thing too.
Yes.
It's real. And it's like, some students, you know, from certain parts of the country are really tucked in. Other female students are a little bit more in front, and they're really reflecting their culture, and it's really just, again, trying to create that equity, that plane of equity there.
Right. You bring up a very interesting point too, and it is all about kind of how, you are empowered as a young girl, no matter what field that you're in classrooms. There are a lot of microaggressions going on, assumptions made, and if I may just take 30 seconds, when I get up on the stage to conduct a symphony orchestra, and let's say I'm doing a kids concert, I do get a lot of notes saying, I didn't know girls could conduct, even now, this is 21st century, it's getting better. And I do get some, Asian girls writing and said, I had no idea Asian women can conduct.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've gotten those comments, from young girls. And I think sometimes I walk into a room and there is a little bit of that holy burden, I call it.
Yeah.
to really behave, right, and be myself, obviously, and exude all of the confidence that may have been given to me by other mentors and family, and none of us got here alone, right? So I'm just curious, with maybe turn it to Shamie and to talk about what do you do? Do you think about this when you go into your classrooms, perhaps? As a woman teacher and music teacher, and not having grown up with any teachers, so you don't even have like a female teacher role model, right? You are you, and how lucky we are at NJYS to have you. But I see you, and your energy and your love for what you do, goes beyond gender. But I know girls are watching.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that came from my personal experience, I guess, because I'm short in stature, like I'm under 5 foot. And when I go sit in at a session or whatever, I would get this thing like, "Oh, you're so cute. You play the piano."
Yes.
And I was really quiet. Like a lot of people don't believe, like I was really shy and really quiet. So after a while, I was like, people don't think I really play. Like I really play the piano. I'm like, oh, I play piano. Oh, you do? That's so cute. So then on the inside of me, I would never say anything, but on the inside of me, I would be like, I'm about to play this piano. I'm about to play it. So like I get on a gig and I just dig in. I just be playing. And then after they're like, oh, you really play the piano? I'd be like, yes, thank you. And
it would throw people off.
It would be nice and quiet, but I let my playing say how strong I felt about what I do. And so that same aspect, I guess, comes in teaching. When I'm teaching the students of, guys, it doesn't matter, girls, they need to know that, like, this is what I do. I'm passionate, and it doesn't matter if I'm a woman, if I'm green, brown, purple, none of that matters. Is that my passion for music is what you need to know. And I really hope that, especially young females, when they feel, because I always get, especially college people, they're like, well, how do you do this? How do you, they have all these thoughts. And I'm like, Jerry Allen always used to say, you let your talent, you don't have to say anything. Your talent says it all. And you don't back down on your talent because of who you are. You play. You just play and you let your talent speak for you. And that will say the most. And that's what I kind of strive to do when I'm teaching, when I'm performing. When all the insecurities come in for whatever reason, I have to diminish that and let my talent speak for me.
Yeah, Shamie, usually there's a term that we call getting house. And that means that like everybody in the audience is like, whoa, and to see her, because she comes in really, hi, and she's little, and then surely enough, she gets on the piano and she's sitting up on the piano, and people are like, whoa, whoa. So she gets house many of the times. Hi, Shamie.
And we and sometimes we have to really careful, like we all have biases, right? We all have those intrinsic biases that we don't talk about, but we assume a lot about sometimes our students. And so kind of having gone through that, Shamie, as a recipient of that kind of either microaggression or just assumption about stature and just like, oh, what could she do kind of thing. I can, imagine that really motivated you to work hard.
It did.
Probably more so, at some point, just because you're going to show them, right? And I'm wondering, Tia, if we could cue up the video.
Sure.
Her solo at the Monterey Jazz.
Oh yeah.
And then watch some of that, and you are in that too, and I love that video. So I'm wondering if you could share that.
I definitely can. Let me see. And I have another one because this is like a short rendition of Shamie, but there's another one where she's kind of digging in, and you can see more of that personality.
You want to see her dig in?
Yeah. Okay, I'm about to share my screen. Let's see. Which one is it? No, not that one. Not that one.
And thank you. We have some questions coming up. So shortly after, we're going to ask your questions, from the attendees.
I'm going to bring it to the beginning so we can. Okay.
That's
Uh-oh.
awesome.
Sorry about that. Let me find.
No problem. That's
Hold on
really
one second.
awesome. We can just hear you guys play all night.
Yeah, thank you. Uh-oh, I can't find the video. Let's see here. Hold on one second.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm
that's
gonna mute my.
Thank you for sharing that. We were, sharing some things on YouTube, but the sound quality wasn't good, so we were kind of sharing it from the source. And so, thank you, Tia, for doing all that tech stuff. So, wow, this is really fun to talk together. But I know our students have some questions, and so I would love to pull up some of these questions from our attendees. And let's start with something really simple. So how much did you practice per day? And what advice would you give for busy high schoolers who love music but have lots to do? I know that both of you, as the Fuller girls there, it sounded like you did anything from cheerleading to, playing a concerto. So how did you balance everything?
Well, this is for me when I was in high school. I just anytime I had the opportunity to practice, I would get to the piano. I can't say that I did it like an hour every day or 2 hours every day because I was very actively involved, like most young people are. I was in sports, I was in FBLA classes and activities. But every time I got to the piano, when I played, I made sure my practicing count. It wasn't like, okay, I'm just going to practice for an hour or 20 minutes. It was a solid. If I knew I had 30 minutes, I was like, okay, I'm going to hit these 8 measures and just focus practice. So I didn't have the opportunity to practice every day just because I was in so much. But I just knew when I practiced, it had to count. I had to be super focused, and I had to, if it was just me running scales for 30 minutes and making sure they were clean, that's what I did. And that's what helped me get through when the times that I was really busy. I can't
Focus, practice, and
focus. Yes.
yeah. Tia, I'm going to combine that question with what do you do when you feel under the weather and don't feel like practicing?
Oh goodness.
So share with us kind of when you were younger, high school days, and then like what you do now, to practice.
This might be a better question for Shamie to answer. It's me being younger, and we laugh about this because a lot of times, the older sister, they see stuff, and I'm like, what? I used to do. But so as a child, I would play with my Barbies. It was all about my Barbies and Easy Bake Oven.
And she would go to the piano and like start practicing and get frustrated and throw the piano book and go play with her dolls.
Yeah.
Tell us all.
Oh gosh, yeah, that was the only thing I threw because Shamie was really good with puzzles. That's just her mind. And I remember I had this animal puzzle thing. There were only 4 big pieces. And I was trying to fit the little cow and Shamie, you remember that? It was yellow. And that one, I chucked that across the room. And then even maybe I shouldn't share this story, but as middle school, practicing flute, I'm like, trying to get a sound. And sometimes it just wouldn't come out because half the air is escaping, the other half is going in. And so I had this pink canopy bed, and I don't suggest this to anyone, but I would like just kind of hit my flute up on my canopy bed like really hard about 5 times. And then I feel like I guaranteed that it played better after those 5 run.
I feel like we should do a disclaimer. Do not try this at home.
Don't do it. It didn't help. It just ruined my flute. But once I got to college, actually high school and being in drumline really taught me the discipline because we would be in drumline practicing our rudiments as a drumline, and then I would actually go home, and after doing homework, I would practice my rudiments on my poor beat down yearbook for about 4 hours after marching band. And that actually prompted me when I started, or when I went to college, I actually wrote out a practice journal. And I'm kind of old school, so I would have my spiral notebook, and every day I would have my whole day written down, like 7 a.m. workout, 8 a.m. long tones, 9 a.m. theory one class. And I would go throughout the day and check off those things that I wanted to complete. And by the end of the week, I saw like my big picture or my short-term goals met, and the things that I didn't check off, it transferred over to the next week. And essentially, I realized that really helped me attach myself to the big picture and the crystallized vision. And this is a term that actually Jerry Allen noted in one of her interviews. But it's about your crystallized vision and really attaching yourself to that and doing it incrementally. Like incremental steps yield exponential growth. And my niece, or Shamie's daughter, would always say, exponential growth or decay, Auntie. I'm like, yes, Kenya. So, yeah.
That's great. That's great. So another question is, I'm going to combine some of these because we really only have 10 minutes and the questions are just so wonderful. So it's about composing. Both of you write music. So to start composing, did you really focus and take music theory, and was it really hard to do? And for another student who says, I write, but sometimes, my ideas, I'm kind of low on my ideas, on writing songs. So maybe combine, just comments about, when you compose, where do you get your inspiration, but how did you get started?
Shamie?
I guess basically, because I went to school for composition. So I didn't start with theory. I mean, I kind of knew it because I played piano, but I always started from what I heard. So I would hear a melody, I'd write it out. And I didn't really get into the theoretical part of it probably until I got into college to understand what it was. But I always, and even now when I compose, I never write from a theoretical perspective. I shouldn't say never. But I always write for what feels good and what sounds good. And then I'll add like the chordal structure. So I may start with a melody. I may start with the bass line. I may just play some chords on the piano and say, oh, that's so nice. Let me have this chord progression and then have a melody over it. So it just depends. But the most important thing is, you don't want to be too technical in the beginning, because that will come the more that you write, because you'll have to understand the technique of it. But to start off, you just start writing what you hear and studying other compositions, saying, oh, why did that composition do that? Why, I looked at other compositions and kind of evaluated what they did, and then, how everything started to make sense as a whole.
Right. Okay, great. Great. Another really interesting question, about kind of improvisation. We have some classically trained students right now, from New Jersey Youth Symphony members too. I know jazz has a lot of improv. Are you reading music when you play with others, or is it just more playing from your years? Is it true that the jazz groups all just work off of each other and play? So it seems a little magical for classical musicians, when you're just kind of going off. But this might be a very interesting answer for classical musicians here. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can I take that?
Sure, I'll take it. And Shamie can insert. I have this other video which could be very helpful to kind of piece it together.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit of both, really. So we do read, like if we're in a big band setting, of course, or we do play. But then usually the way that I like to think of it is the music is our roadmap. And usually on that roadmap are, of course, the melody and also the chord changes and then the form of the tune. And so from that, when we kind of depart from the melody, there's an opportunity where you can start improvising. And one of the things about improvising is anybody can do it. If you can play an instrument, or not even, if you could just sing something, you can improvise, because we improvise every day, all day in our lives. And really, it's like having a conversation. It's you might hear something from the drummer and you could play something rhythmic from the drummer, or you hear a line that maybe if I'm playing saxophone, the piano player is playing and I'm playing off of that. And it becomes like this very beautiful or maybe aggressive conversation, but all of us are we're communicating and we're listening just as much and probably more than we're playing. We're probably listening about 90% of the time and then playing 10%. And
So can I say something real quick?
oh yeah.
Yeah. And with that, last summer when I worked with the NYO jazz program, they had all the jazz faculty work with the orchestras. And we split up into groups, and I had like about 20 orchestra kids, and we talked about improv. And in the beginning, when I was like, okay, we're gonna start improvising, and some of them were like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? But like Tia said, anybody can do it. So it's like I started off and I said, we're gonna play an emotion. And I have a violinist play angry. How would angry sound on your instrument? And then everybody would kind of chime in, and then it would be this song that we just all improv over an emotion. And then by the whole end of the whole session, they were like, oh, this is what improv is. It wasn't like because if you're not in it, you don't really know what it is until someone is like, oh, it's just really just creating something from what you hear or an emotion that you feel. And it's a little bit more attainable. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Thank you. I really want to get to this next question.
Okay, sure.
Is it difficult to be successful as a woman jazz musician? What advice would you give for an aspiring young woman musician? Probably from, in all different disciplines, but just being a woman, and being successful, is it hard? I mean, you two are doing it, you are just so dynamic, and I'm so happy, especially for our young musicians, to look at you and go, wow, I want to be like that. So what do you think? I mean, what's unique about being a woman? And that's kind of focus of our talk tonight. What's difficult? What are some of the things that you encounter that you had to overcome? I mean, I know, Shamie, you talked about that, just people assuming kind of, oh, she's so cute, that kind of thing. But, yeah, let's hear about that.
Yeah. I guess I'll go. It, you know, I think anything that we choose in life breeds certain challenges. And early on, when I first started playing, I wasn't even thinking that, oh, I'm a female saxophonist. I just knew in my brain that I was trying to be the best saxophonist that I could possibly be. And it really wasn't until I started playing out in public. My dad, or our dad, would always book these gigs, and there would be trio gigs in steakhouses. Ruth Chris Steakhouse, Sullivan Steakhouse. And people would be coming up, and it would be me, Shamie, and my dad. And, oh my gosh, you play so good for a girl. Oh my gosh, you sound like a man. And it's like, when did we start putting gender to music, which is a very interesting concept and conversations that we've been having. Um, but you know, I think I think being a woman, it definitely yields to a lot of sexism in the music, and then that being projected upon you, and here you are just trying to do the best you can as a musician, and you're having to kind of counter this. I remember, here's a story. I have two stories actually. The first one is I was at a jazz club in Colorado called El Chapultepec Lounge. And it's a great small jazz club. They had the best smothered burritos, and we both kind of grew up in there. And I was up there, the only woman playing, and this man after the set came up to me, and he was like, "Why aren't you smiling?" And I was like, "What?" He was like, "Why aren't you smiling?" And I'm like, "Because I'm playing." I mean, I didn't say that at the time, and I must have been about 18. But I took my takeaway from that was like, why didn't he go to anybody else on the stage? Why do I have to be the token to smile? And then my second experience, when I first moved to New York, I remember just standing in line with all the other guys sitting in at a session, and then I stood up there. I was about to put the horn in my mouth, and then this other guy walked in front of me and started playing, and I was like, oh, okay, that's the first and the last time that's going to happen. So it's these different experiences of how to gauge yourself and not lose your element of femininity, but maintaining the balance of, okay, I need to be really direct if I'm talking to club owners so that they don't think that I'm not a businesswoman. It's a bunch of things to balance in that. And yeah, I don't know, Sham, do you have anything to add to that?
Basically, it's kind of similar experiences. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. But one thing I do know, and what I've seen being at Berkeley, is that I think this younger generation, they're more conscious of those things, and the young men are way more inclusive, and they're more they have a heightened level of consciousness as far as the things that you're supposed to say. Whereas the older generation, sometimes they just say stuff that's just out. It's just out of context, and it's like
Right.
that. That's really sexist. So I think it's getting better.
Yeah. Oh, wow. This has been just an amazing, amazing conversation. And I really thank you. And because it is 1 minute before 8 o'clock, there's one attendee who says, this isn't exactly a question, but I just wanted to say thank you for being such an inspiration to me. I am 16 years old, and hearing you both play gave me a lot of motivation to keep going,
Oh,
even when it gets hard.
wow.
These
Oh,
are the
Good.
moments where you just go, okay,
yeah.
good.
That's so sweet. Thank you to whomever that is. Know that there's always inspiration out there.
Yeah.
Especially you
Yes,
can just Google names and
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and as we kind of wrap up here, and thanking you, I found in Tia somewhere kind of something written about you. It says, as an artist, performer, and teacher, Ms. Fuller feels that she's fulfilling her purpose here on this earth, which is to serve as a light for others. And I know that growing up in what must be just such a wonderful musical family for both of you, and continuing to be that light for other people, even just this hour, to hear from a 16-year-old musician who's, getting so much inspiration from both of you and your work. And this is kind of probably what that means, serving as a light for other people. And especially during this COVID-19 time when we cannot come together, our students are not being able to really make music fully, yet they are so, resilient, and they keep on going. And this is kind of the reason why we are doing this a Friday webinar, to hear from artists such as yourselves, to hear about what your journey has been like, and what you had to kind of fight through and work really hard to kind of get where you wanted to be and beyond, and kind of working really hard, but with sense of purpose and kind of knowing who you are. I think that's just really amazing that you can share that, and girl power, for the girls out there who might be just feeling a little bit, not quite comfortable, yet. So, thank you so much for people out in YouTube, watching us, and also in the participants in this webinar. I just want to close out by saying that there are 9 more of these webinars coming up. Tonight was the first one of its series, and next week we'll hear from Stanford Thompson, who's the founder of Play on Philly, and also a wonderful trumpeter. We'll be talking about the community, how we practice together, being a more inclusive community, celebrating diversity, but also just being able to transfer as musicians how to practice. We can practice being in a community together and being a healthy member of it too. So, well, thank you so much. Thank you, Shamie. Thank you, Tia. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you so much, all of you, for spending this hour with us. And we will come back next week, and you can visit us at whartonarts.org, where the links are available for you to register to come on to other webinars as well. So, well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you again.
These are great questions. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. And Alyssa is going to play us out with Shamie's playing from one of her albums.